go live. And
No need to
so,
talk about anything, or
no,
the
we'll just
topics are
start.
fine.
Well, yeah. I mean, what? Remind me what they are.
Well, we were going to
Go
talk
with the
about
flow.
the Ukraine summit today, which actually didn't seem to produce that much. But the Putin summit's been declared and
Right. Yeah.
efforts to come to peace. And then we didn't actually, I don't think, talk about the Hamas Gaza peace deal because that was after.
Right.
That was on Monday. I mean, it seems like so long
A long
ago.
time ago. I know. Like I say, the Trump years are measured in dog years. But yeah. Well, we'll
Yeah.
just follow your lead, John.
Well, those are and then the third topic was we are going to talk about the Voting Rights Act case,
Yeah.
Calais. And
Right.
then the fourth topic you guys wanted to talk, I wasn't sure whether you wanted to talk about Calais or you wanted to, I mean, something else at the court, or whether we have time to talk about the Higher Education Compact.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't. I don't know. I've had my nose down getting these lectures ready, and I'm totally useless in a lot of ways. So you
What
and
about
Lucretia
Linda?
have
Is there
it.
anything you want to do
I
on the
did want to
fourth?
talk about Katanji. I know that again, that was
Yeah.
so far back, but
Well,
and
I mean,
maybe
it
a
was
little
just
bit
like
about
that was, I think that was Tuesday or Wednesday. No,
yeah,
I think it was just Wednesday. It was just 2 days ago.
yeah.
right.
Um, uh, I mean, I think that the case itself is pretty important,
Yeah, the
actually.
case
Yeah.
itself.
I
So,
have a lot of thoughts on that. So, no, go ahead and start
mhm.
us out, John. We got the live stream going. We may even have some viewers for all I know. So, I will say this before we go is that paid subscriptions are pouring in like crazy today to the Substack.
Really?
That's because
Because of Ammo Girl?
because of Ammo Girl's arrival. She
Well,
is that
I
popular.
I never
So,
seen her before, so I looked at you. You texted a picture, and she looks like a Walmart greeter to me. I didn't see any guns or ammo.
oh,
I wasn't scared. I'm gonna say
oh,
that.
okay. Well, go ahead and start us out, and those will be fighting words for a lot of listeners. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome everybody to a live stream podcast of the Three Whiskey Happy Hour, where I am joined by my co-host Steve Hayward. Say hi to everyone. Steve, and how are you?
Hi, everybody. How am I? I'm good, but not as good as
Great.
you, John. I noticed that you have made the transition from McRib to ribs this week. You sent us that picture of a gigantic pork rib, or was it a beef rib?
That's just standard. That's a standard cocktail fare in Austin, Texas.
It looked tougher than shoe leather the way you were grimacing, John.
You haven't lived till you've had Brontosaurus.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
That thing was huge. And
Steve, I have a
Luke,
comment. I
I
just
didn't even get to introduce the International
Hi,
Woman
sorry.
of Mystery, Lucretia.
Yeah.
How are you? And you have a
I'm
comment.
well, thank you. And I'm drinking Orphan Barrel again, which is I've decided is my favorite, and it is old enough
Mm.
to vote. So, but I
Oh,
have
good.
to because of my financial straits, I have to limit myself to once every 6 months or so. I
Your
am kidding,
financials. Oh, so
folks.
are you furloughed?
No, I'm
Oh,
fired. Remember?
oh
Well,
I
no,
got
I
fired six
didn't.
months ago, John. You just don't pay any attention.
I
well,
just
but
thought you were making that. I thought that was a joke. You're
Well,
really.
I mean, it
Oh,
kind of is. I'm fired from all of my administrative positions, so
oh well, that's
where the money
Liberation
is.
Day.
yeah,
Yeah, it
that's a
is. It
blessing.
is. Mostly because the college I do it that for is gone.
But
Ah,
Anyway, but I wanted to give Steve a hard time. My most pretentious intellectual friend I've ever known, God love him, has these little grammatical infelicities that drive me crazy. How are you
what
today,
would be
Steve?
one?
yeah,
Good. Me and Lucretia,
what did I say that?
you
But
always say that, both of
well,
them. And so I just all I want to do for just a moment is point out that there's this little part of Steve that just doesn't want to give in to that pretension because I know he knows better. Okay, sorry.
I thought you were
Um,
talking about somebody else when you said your most pretentious intellectual that you know. I mean, surely
you
there's somebody more than me. No, I'm the
no,
champ.
Of
even
all the people in the
Hadley got
Claremont
you.
universe,
The
Well,
best part about Hadley on the whole day was when he started making fun of Steve's affectations. I just wanted to get up and dance a jig.
by the
So
way,
there. Okay.
like Hitler in front of the Eiffel Tower, no doubt.
yeah,
Ooh.
By the way, I'll pass this along for anybody who doesn't listen to the Ricochet podcast, but I asked Charles Murray this morning the same question I asked Hadley about martinis. And he reminded me, I'd completely forgotten this. He reminded me that Robert Bork was not only a gin martini drinker, but said no olives because it's a cocktail, not a salad, which I thought was good.
Only reason to drink martinis is because of the olives. Ugh.
No. Okay.
Well,
Anyway, John.
Why do you even pretend they're a drink? It's just drinking a shot of vodka or a shot of gin.
Yeah, no, I don't really like vodka.
don't get
I
that.
definitely don't like vermouth, except in my mushrooms and onions. And it's actually just an opportunity to eat alcohol infused olives. So there you go.
Yeah, that's
If I have
that's
to
good
drink a
point.
martini, that's what I'll do.
All right, John, where are you taking us this week?
So I'm the host this week, and so I thought, as the resident neocon on the podcast, that we should talk about foreign policy, but also because foreign policy has seen, I think, incredible change in just the last week. Since our last episode, the United States brokered a peace deal that brought the war in Gaza to at least a ceasefire and the release of all the hostages, Israeli hostages held by Hamas in Gaza, the withdrawal of Israel back to about half the country, a ceasefire, and then a international peace conference held in Egypt it seems to get the ball rolling for a broader peace settlement that might normalize relations between Israel and much of the Arab world. That's incredible. Then this week, we also had an announcement of a summit meeting that will take place in Budapest between President Trump and President Putin of Russia. I was about to say the Soviet Union, same thing, but of Russia. And today, you had a summit between Trump and President Zelensky of Ukraine, which ended up with President Trump being ambiguous, I would say, about whether we will provide Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine. So let's start out.
But a great.
But if it were to happen, it would bring, and it depends, of course, how many would be given. But the Tomahawk is the U.S. Navy's weapon of choice for long-range attacks and would bring much of the Russian oil infrastructure within range of Ukrainian weapons. So, okay, you want to start with Steve. Steve, what do you think? Is this too much winning? Is Trump really a foreign policy mastermind, or are these just maybe glimmers of hope of a peace settlement, but nowhere near to what people are saying in the press?
Yeah. So what I think is if Trump can bring an honorable peace agreement that ends the war, he should get the next 10 Nobel Peace Prizes, right? I think that let's talk more specifically about Ukraine in a moment, but I think what you saw, well, let me do it this way. Darn that Peggy Noonan, after she said something really sensible 2 weeks ago and then wrote a terrible column a week ago, last Saturday, she wrote a pretty good column saying, gosh, you know what? What Trump is proving is that the experts really are full of beans and we can't do anything right. And it turns out that, having a bunch of real estate guys can make better peace deals than all the State Department striped pants people. I think there's something to that. One little detail I did not realize until today is that after the invasion of Ukraine in 2022, is that what it was? The Biden administration imposed sanctions on Russia, including closing off their access to the SWIFT international banking system, except they exempted from those sanctions Russian oil sales. Well, talk about wanting to have sanctions that are symbolic and don't do very much. That would certainly be it, because that's the source of so much of Russian revenue to fund their war effort. And supposedly the Trump people are thinking about, well, if we're going to go the sanctions route, and, I don't know, sanctions always take time and I think are of limited effectiveness, but they will put sanctions on Russian oil sales. And we'll see about the Tomahawks. I don't know. I'll just, my one little stray thought about this is having the summit in Hungary is kind of interesting because right now, with an election looming next spring, Viktor Orban is trailing in the polls. He's been in office for 15 years. And I saw a tweet the other day from Barack Obama saying, "Oh, I'm meeting with friends of mine who want to strengthen democracy in Poland and Hungary." Why do we need to strengthen democracy there? Because they vote for the wrong people. That's why. That's the whole reason for it. It's unbelievable. So I kind of think having the summit there in Budapest is going to be a little feather in the cap of Orban. Trump will go out of his way to praise the government. So I think there's a collateral purpose for meeting there, which I'm all in favor of.
Hmm.
Lucretia,
Hmm.
You're
your
not so
thoughts?
sure.
No, I
Is it
don't
too much?
disagree.
Is it too much winning?
Never too much winning, but I definitely agree with Steve that I actually think it's more than the real estate and the ability to the art of the deal, shall we say. I think that because Trump was willing to walk away from the failed foreign policy establishments failures, abject failures of what since the end of the Cold War. I don't know that we've had any major victories since then, and that's a bipartisan thing. You can talk about that. Oh, that picture of Obama gives me nightmares because he's sitting there with his little hands crossed and his little legs crossed and kind of hunched over like, oh my God, that guy was actually at one moment the leader of the free world. Anyway, he's of course very upset because Trump is winning and wants to do anything he can, like, try to undermine some of Trump's allies, like Poland, and strong allies like Poland. Anyway, what I think is amazing about Trump is he just doesn't play the game the way the game's always been played. I'm not certain how all of this is going to come out. I have a lot of concerns about Gaza, um,
Well,
because
what are those? Because right now you read the American press, it's right jubilation basically. What are your
they're
concerns
murdering their
about it?
own citizens. They're
Mhm.
refusing to disarm. And Hamas is doing that, and the damn Palestinians are in the street cheering them. Why do we care what happens to those subhuman creatures? I am done. I
Mm.
mean, get them maybe disperse them across. Well, of course, no Arab country will take any of them because they're such despicable excuses for human beings. But maybe, get everything out of Gaza and let the children, I think you have to go to like 6 months and below because otherwise they're already learning how to shoot AK-47s and kill Jews. Gaza is a hopeless, god-awful place, and I'm not sure what is worth saving there. They're just, it's the antithesis of everything human beings are supposed to be. It is the worst of the Muslims that's so bad other Muslim countries won't take them. So I'm worried because I think some of this success on Trump's part might actually lead him, or at least the situation might lead him to not be as tough on those scum as he needs to be. I mean, he says he's going to disarm them, but we're not going to do it with American troops. And what does that mean? Um, and in the meantime, Hamas still uses tunnels underneath schools and hospitals and so on, and uses innocents as shields. They don't deserve. I mean, I have a really hard time saying something like that because I believe all human beings are deserving of a certain amount of dignity, but those people have been so corrupted that they're barbarians, I guess is how, the old ancients would put it. They're barbarians. They're hopeless. And the only hope for them is to bring in a whole new culture and get rid of everybody over the age of 4, I guess I'd probably say. Anyway, that's my thought on the matter. I don't know what to think about Ukraine other than I'm hoping that the Tomahawk missile threat is just a bargaining chip. And he doesn't really mean it.
By get rid of though, you mean remove from Gaza, not kill. I
No, I don't want to kill them,
just
although
want to
I
clarify
do
in your
think,
own interest
no,
to make
absolutely.
clear
I do
Lucretia is
think
not
that,
saying that we should wipe
mm-mm,
out the population of Gaza. You mean just remove them from power and
definitely
disperse
from
them
power,
somewhere? Although
disperse
it's not
them.
clear where they would
Yeah,
go
because
because as you
nobody will
say, no
take
one
them.
will take them.
I
Yeah.
just, it's a tough call. That's what I began saying. I don't know what the right answer is, but they're already celebrating and going back to everything that made them horrible and despicable in the first place. So I just don't know how it's going to turn out. I'm hoping for the world's sake, for Israel's sake, even for the few innocent Palestinians that might be there, that all of this peace plan actually works itself out. I just can't really see how it's going to happen
Can I
dealing with
add,
those people.
I had
Steve?
one observation is I did see a story earlier in the week of one of the hostages, the live hostages that came out, said his captors told him they were very scared of Donald Trump in the election last year, and that their treatment improved to some extent after Trump's election because they're scared of the guy. It goes back to the old wild man theory, right? I always thought that one of the things that sobered up, and we have the testimony of this from POWs in North Vietnam and Hanoi in 1972, that when the Christmas bombings, as they were called, started, and Nixon ordered those serious bombings, which, by the way, had one of the lowest civilian casualty rates of any serious bombing campaign in history. That's not the way the media screamed about it, but never mind that. The point was that Nixon ordered those that bombing campaign and made no public announcement and left for the holidays down in Key Biscayne, wherever it was he spent Christmas. And the POWs said they could tell by the change and the fear they could see in the face of their captors that this frightened them. So I think, Trump just out of the blue bombing with our B-2 bombers, the nuclear sites in Iran, that was a game changer, along with Israel shooting missiles at Qatar here a month ago, which we then tutted. But like the Israeli attack on the Iraqi nuclear reactor in 1981, behind the scenes, we were all for it, even though publicly we say the usual nonsense. So I think there's something to be said for that. So I don't
Never
know.
underestimate Steve too. Agreed on all of that. The impact of refusal by the Trump administration, Trump State Department to say, well, we have to have a two-state solution.
Right.
And once that was off I mean, no, Republicans, Democrats, moderates, whatever you want to say, it was always two-state solution. Why on earth would the Palestinians, even if they weren't the scum that they are, deserve a state? I don't understand where that even came from, but it became it became dogma. It became a religious right to, two-state solution. Give Trump credit for that one. No, they don't need a two-state solution. Let's have the Muslim Arab countries come in and rebuild Gaza, and amazing stuff is all amazing.
Well, the
Don't know
problem
how he
is
does it.
that the country that would naturally annex Gaza would be Egypt. But as you said, Lucretia, Egypt doesn't want to have anything to do with them. But
They have a great wall.
right? They're contiguous with the Sinai Peninsula. So and then I mean, the other big problem is the West Bank, because if there were going to be a Palestinian state, it would be there. And Jordan used to have the West Bank, if you recall back in your history, and they don't want it anymore because the Palestinians tried to overthrow the royal family.
Yeah.
And after that, they got kicked out. And Jordan doesn't want to have anything to do with them either.
Let's remember.
Interesting.
Well, let's remember that Bill Clinton had worked out a deal with the Israelis to offer the Palestinians. This is 25 years ago when Clinton was still president and Yasser Arafat was still alive, to offer them about, I think, 99% of the West Bank and Gaza, and create a land corridor and some other land swaps for some of the Israeli settlements in the West Bank. And Arafat walked away from it. And I always thought he walked away from it because he knew that if he agreed to that deal, he'd be dead in a week. The radicals would kill him. And I don't think he wanted to anyway. I mean, I'm not trying to make out a case for his beneficence at all. And to his credit, Bill Clinton has bitterly pointed out this ever since, because I think Bill Clinton thought that would get him the Nobel Prize. It might have, if it came about. And he still talks with great bitterness about Arafat. And I've heard secondhand stories that in private, he's even more savage about the Palestinians and their leadership. And, that's crazy old Bill Clinton. So there you go.
I just want you guys to know that after that happened, I had to purge my wardrobe of anything that even hinted at houndstooth, which is really upsetting because there's some very nice wool. I had some very nice wool houndstooth jackets, and I got rid of all of them because I didn't ever want anybody to think.
People think you're wearing a keffiyeh. Oh, you would look great in a
just that I was.
keffiyeh.
I mean, Arafat never went anywhere without his houndstooth keffiyeh.
Lucretia, you would look great in a burqa because there would be an AK-47 underneath it, I bet. And a bayonet probably too. That actually, I had a comment because Steve, one big piece of news for the podcast world that Steve runs to his universe is that he's welcomed the and other international woman of mystery, Ammo Girl, who's no longer mysterious, to the Political Questions Substack.
Right,
which is big news. But in the picture, I've never met her. I've never gone to the commenter con. I was disappointed, Steve.
What?
I was expecting someone up-armed with bandoliers of ammo on both arms and weapons, something like a Rambo movie. But to me, she looked like a Walmart greeter. I mean,
oh my God!
Don't say that about.
I wasn't scared at all. I was
Beautiful.
expecting, some
She's
little
scary, I
machine gun
promise
action.
you.
Yeah, don't be deceived, John. By the way, maybe I'm going to go with this, listeners. I put John up to saying those horribly monstrous things because I want to get Susan on the podcast, but she's a technophobe by her own admission, and I did get her on Zoom once.
She's here in Arizona.
I know,
so
right?
I should just drive up to her house and make her come on with me.
Well,
she doesn't do podcasts.
No. I got her on Zoom once a few years ago for a meeting, actually, and then something crashed, and it was it's a lot of stress for her. But I'll say this: one of the things I want to interview her about is that because I asked her one time, I said, "Is it just me, or are most female comics not any good?" And she says, "Oh, no, it's not you at all. You're absolutely right." And she's got a whole riff about why most women comedians are bad. Well, she's really good. Lucretia and I have seen her in action.
Yes.
So
don't be fooled by her appearance.
She doesn't know how to use Zoom, but she alleges to know how to manipulate the thing on the AR-15 in California that prevents you from quickly shifting magazines. That's way more teched up than, you got to have way more skill than you operating Zoom to do that with that little bullet button and all that business.
Don't be fooled by appearances, John.
Well, let's have her on as a guest next week, I hope, or the week after. And then we could have a Lucretia Ammo Girl cage match.
Well,
and even I will just hide because we don't want to get in the middle of anything.
We don't fight about anything.
You guys are in agreement.
Simpatico. We agree on everything.
By the way, for people who aren't watching for people who are not watching the live stream, which is you all should be scolded, but for those who are not watching, you can't see that Lucretia's opening a mysterious box, which I'm sure contains some kind of ammunition or gun.
No, better than that.
By the way, she's cradling it.
Get it open. I'm not very good at this. I'm going to show you guys, and
just
it's going to be live.
Well, now,
hold on. You just have to be careful because sometimes it just falls out on the floor and breaks a tile. So hold on.
What's going on? Well, I was going to say, are you going to move on to Venezuela, or are we skipping Venezuela? I mean, that's getting rowdy today, right?
I think we should move on to Ukraine because we talked mostly about Gaza. And so why don't we talk about Ukraine? What is going on here with the? Do we worry about a Trump-Putin summit? The last one produced yada yada yada, nothing. It was a gun.
Wow.
Lucretia has produced a gun out of her Amazon box. I guess it wasn't from Amazon. Look at that thing.
It is a Smith & Wesson 686 with a 357 with a 4-inch barrel.
Hold that up.
Jesus.
Isn't it beautiful? It's mine.
So not to get you or anybody in trouble, but how is it that came to you in the mail in a cardboard box?
Came from FedEx. I had to sign for it. I had to stay home all day and wait for this I had to show my ID. But the reason, you guys will be happy to know, the reason that that this was a gift, but the reason I was given this is because I have one with a 6-inch barrel and I can shoot. I am Annie Oakley with that 357 with the 6-inch barrel. The problem is it's too big to carry. And this is a little bit big to carry. Here's the problem. My husband, Lucretia.
Just so the listeners understand, Lucretia now is very happy because she got a 357 that will fit in her purse. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and all my purses have built-in.
Because in the past, there was just a little barrel sticking out of the top.
No, here's this is the sad part. This is the saddest part. Mr. Lucretia kept buying me 9mm, and the problem, I cannot rack the slide.
Or the slide.
My hands are too old and arthritic. So, but believe it or not, this baby,
Oh yeah.
I can. I'll take anybody out that I need to.
And that's a
I'll
slick
just
looking
leave it
gun,
at
I have
that.
to say.
It's a beauty,
know,
isn't it? Okay.
Hamas
enough
and
about that.
Hamas and
Oh,
Gaza, make sure you start shaking down people with handbags and watch out. The next woman in a burqa with a handbag with a slight bulge in it could be Lucretia coming to do business. So the next issue I thought we'd talk about would be Ukraine. So what do we make of the announced summit that's going to occur between Trump and Putin? Has Trump had a personality transplant on Putin and the Ukraine war? Now he's talking about possibly transferring Tomahawk missiles to cruise missiles to Ukraine. He's been harshly critical of Putin. He says, I believe the quote something along the lines of, Putin tells us a lot of bull, but doesn't do anything. It seems like Trump has turned a 180 on Putin. And is this kind of, ratcheting up of pressure and taking a harder line going to produce finally a peace there? How about Lucretia? Why don't you start?
I, John, I'm not your expert on this. I just pray for it. I'll be honest with you. It's a little bit obvious to me that Trump believed that with his braggadocio and other things he brought to the table that he would have a quicker ending to the Ukraine-Russia war. And I think it's because he genuinely wanted it. He, unlike others in positions of power in Washington, D.C., he is not interested in lining the pockets of Raytheon, et cetera, nor is he interested in sort of a permanent war somewhere in Eastern Europe. But it turned out to be a bit more intractable than he expected. I do think, again, blame Biden for some of this because Biden emboldened Putin in a way that it makes it more difficult for him to walk it back. And I think Trump probably didn't expect that. So I am hoping the simplest, oversimplified explanation is Trump is escalating things with talks of tomahawks, etc., to get Putin to the table. I think he's probably got some carrot stick things going on in the background, and maybe I pray it will work. I really am no expert to make any kind of predictions. I wish I was in Budapest. I will tell you that much.
But Lucretia, you've been quite a pessimist about the Ukraine war, I think, and thought that we had overcommitted and that we were wasting our resources.
I still believe that. But I also believe that the fecklessness of the Biden administration prolonged that conflict a lot longer than it needed to be. Is there going to be a decision that gives Russia some of the occupied territory, some of the territory that they've taken over? Why not just have let that happen at the beginning? Get Russia and Putin and Zelensky to the table and hammer things out. But there was never any interest in that on the Biden administration's part. One more thing, this is for all of my most extreme followers out there. We are in the
as opposed to the moderates.
Moderate ones, right? I know, right?
There are moderates who like me. Just saying.
Produce them. Because
it makes them feel better about the fact that they're maybe not as extreme as they worried they were. But never forget that the entire debacle, the despicable, vile role of the Bidens and the Biden administration in Ukraine and the whole Trump impeachment and all of that. I would love someday to see John Solomon or someone else who's a really, really good investigative reporter figure out just how deep the corruption and the rot goes on the whole Ukraine thing. It's deep. There's no doubt about it. And what I don't know is whether or not that had played some role in preventing Biden from encouraging a negotiated settlement with Russia. I don't know.
Well,
again, not my area of expertise.
Yeah. Well, I did point out, I pointed this out a couple of years ago that the number one foreign donor country to the Clinton Foundation was Ukraine. by a lot.
Oh,
And I mean,
didn't
come
know
on,
that.
that was not, oh gosh, Ukraine said, we're really interested in the Clinton Global Initiative. Nonsense. It was obvious what that was all about. That was about corruption and money laundering and recycling State Department grants and all the rest of that stuff. It just stinks to high heaven. Lucretia's right about this. That said, I'm not for aggression, and I don't like the Russians. I'm with the Poles on all of this. But by the way, John, where were you 20 minutes ago when I was going through about, we're going to put real sanctions on them and all the rest of that? My only
He was
additional.
watching me open a box.
I'm with you. I'm
Okay,
with you
well,
on that.
all right. Well, I'll just give one last thought, which is we may now be in a circumstance where Trump's narcissism and his personal self-regard is to our advantage in a big way. Why? He's had all these triumphs of ending conflicts around the world, capped with now the Gaza business. No matter how the aftermath, Lucretia's right, but the point is this was a big deal that you got to this point. And now the last remaining thing is that, and because Trump had said, I'm going to end this thing quickly because I'm the peacemaker and all the rest of that, Putin's making him look bad. And if Trump comes away empty-handed, I could see Trump saying, tomahawks and as many as they want. I don't know. We'll see about that. But my guess is now Trump has been delaying long enough and going back and forth, right? His comment, 2 weeks ago, oh gosh, maybe Ukraine can win back all that territory that they've lost, which that'd be a pretty tall order. But I've got to think that between the wild man theory and the fact that Putin is making Trump look bad, and Trump does not like to be made look bad, I think that Trump has the initiative here.
I have a
So
question.
is your point that because he wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize, this is,
No.
and I don't understand this obsession with the Nobel Peace Prize. What I thought would be awesome is if he were to win it and then he were not to accept it and turn it down.
I think he would have.
Given the people who have won it. But is it really just
Yasser Arafat.
The fact that Yasser Arafat, the person, was it the Central American winner who made up the whole story that got her the Nobel Peace Prize? You go on and on. But is his desire for this Nobel Peace Prize really such a obsession that it actually leads him to doing the right things, but it produces good policy as a side effect?
I think that's a little bit superficial, John. I think that, he joked about it. He said he didn't want it. He wanted it for America. Yeah. But I don't think it's, who cares if he gets the Nobel Peace Prize? Obama got it before he was even in office. So it's not, it's like the what is it, the MacArthur Prize?
Genius Awards, right? Yeah.
Genius Awards. I mean, it's just, if you don't join a pantheon of truly great people, who cares? But I do think he cares about being known as a genuine peacemaker.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you guys a real quick question, because maybe it's just the circles I run in. I want to know why we're obsessed with Gaza, even Ukraine, and we don't give a damn about what's happening in Nigeria, where Muslims are just brutally just killing Christians in the most horrific manner possible.
It is not strategically significant to our national security.
Well, wait a minute. I'm not.
I mean, that's the cold-blooded reason.
If we cared about that, though, we would not care so about Gaza. We would just have let Israel level them, which is what I think we should have done. But
I'm not quite sure that's. I'm not quite sure that's right, John.
The Middle East is important because it's still this, after us, the largest source of oil and energy in the world. Yeah, the United States, right under the Carter administration, basically almost put it on a par of importance with Europe. I'm
not sure.
Maybe that's a mistake now that we have, we produce more oil than they do, but we shouldn't care about the Middle East if it weren't next to it doesn't sit on top of this large deposit of oil.
Well, okay.
GNC, I still care about the fact that Christians are being brutally murdered across the world.
The other thing is, John, I'm not quite sure that's right, that what's going on in Nigeria is not of some material interest to the United States. We've got a lot of our oil companies have major operations going on. Nigeria is one of the top oil producing countries in the world. You must know that, or if you don't, because you don't study
Supreme Court cases about it.
Yeah, well, you don't, it's because of your neglect of the Clean Air Act that you don't know this.
This was all building up. 35 minutes. You were plotting.
But two quick
bring the Clean Air Act on.
Two quick points about this. One is that someone who has talked about this in a surprising place is Bill Maher on his Friday quote unquote comedy show. he said he had Nancy Mace on, and they got along great. I was surprised at that, right? Because the Hollywood elite hate her. Anyway, and he was saying, yeah, this is a scandal that we're not paying attention to this. But the broader point is that the most rapidly Christianizing, is that the right word, a region of the world is Africa.
Yep.
And these conflicts have been rising for a while. And a lot of people have been saying for a long time that people like Robert Kaplan, is that the guy's name, who does all these travels the right, is that this is where it's not that the Middle East is going to go away in terms of the venue for primary conflict, but Africa is really going to be where the rumble is going to happen. And maybe that's too flippant.
People have been saying that for like 60, 70 years, if not longer.
No, I don't think so. But
and the Russians, Soviets wasted enormous amounts of resources struggling through proxies in Africa during the Cold War. Did it do us any real good? I don't think so. But if you look at it's just not it shouldn't be a priority, right? First priority, and this goes to the question Steve wanted to talk about, is securing the Western Hemisphere. That's Venezuela, right?
Wait a minute, stop for a second.
That's the most important strategic priority, securing the Western Hemisphere.
Again, how can you care about the scum in Palestine? And
I'm not saying they're as important as that. They're less important. And Africa is less important than them.
Constraints? No. Why would there be any constraints upon wiping those people off the face of the earth if what you say is true? Because Israel, of course, is the key to peace and all of our national interests in the Middle East. So why not let Israel do whatever it wants to do? I don't believe that, but if you're going to do what you say, if you're going to have a silly, realist national security policy that just looks
I don't understand what the alternative is. Is the foreign policy should just be set on where Christians happen to be in the world?
No, not Christians. It doesn't have to be Christians. Obviously, Israel's not primarily Christian, but there is no doubt. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. There is no doubt that Islam is the greatest source of evil in the world today. And the fact that we are not fighting it everywhere we do, we're not fighting it at home. You can't go to Dearborn, Michigan, and you have to have prayers. I won't even go there. I think that if you can't understand that Islam is not a religion of peace, it is a source of evil in the world. There's no place you can find where it is not at least a repressive ideology, much worse in most places. We should be fighting Islam anywhere and everywhere.
I don't agree with that. I think there are more moderate Islam. The largest Muslim country in the world by population is Indonesia. Indonesia has a very moderate form of Islam, and they have been an ally of ours off and on over the decades, as has been Turkey. Turkey not right now, but but in the Cold War, Turkey was a really important ally of ours. But my boy's just like, I just don't think that our foreign policy should be set by religion.
Well, wait a minute.
It's not religion.
Well, now hold on.
You just said it's Islam.
John,
I think the biggest threat to the United States is the Chinese Communist Party. And China. Far more of a threat to us than these countries.
Well, 3 points. To someone who teaches grand strategy, I'm amazed at how obtuse you are about this question on 3 grounds.
What?
One of them is the whole subject about Islam is too long to take up here. I'll just plant as a flag for later, perhaps, that the problem with Islam is that it had its enlightenment before its Reformation, right? I mean, medieval Islam was, that's how we recovered Plato and Aristotle. Okay, long story about that. And so, Christianity 1,000 years ago had the Crusades, lots of violence and so forth. And, that all changed with a lot of, and Indonesia may be the leading edge of being optimistic about what a future might be like if they ever change their mind. Okay, leave that aside. But the other thing is, John, as you should know, you must know this, but maybe you don't, I already made the point that Africa is the most rapidly Christianizing continent in the world. By the way, it's very conservative Christianity, which I like.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're all the breakaway, right?
Yeah, the Episcopal Church in Africa is far more conservative than the one here and in Yes.
And then the other problem is a demographic one, how
faithful.
fast the population is growing in Africa. And if you ignore that, it's just storing up a lot of trouble for the future. And point number 3, because you brought it up, is guess where China is actively trying to tie up the place in what looks like 21st century neocolonialism.
Yep.
And
Good
that's
luck
why
to them. They can have it.
no, I think that's the other thing. We get, now see, you sound about Africa the way Lucretia sounds about Gaza.
No. I don't want to move or wipe anyone. I just don't think it's worth investment of American resources because Africa is unstable, has very, right, the nation state system was kind of grafted onto a continent that was governed more by tribal systems. It's just too unstable country. Look, the British tried, the Germans tried, the French tried. It's all been pretty sorry. And, and during the Cold War, we had a competition with the Soviets and the communists for influence in Africa. I don't think it returned us really much of anything. If China wants to waste a lot of resources in Africa, let them do it. I mean, I don't think it's the priority is security of the Western Hemisphere, security of Europe, and the Middle East and East Asia.
But
Africa is just way down on priority.
The debate, the conversation, if you will, about Gaza, for instance, is genocide. Nothing on the order of genocide ever happened in Gaza, although it should have.
I don't think so. I don't think there's any genocide going on in Gaza.
But there's a lot of genocide happening throughout different parts of Africa, including and especially Nigeria.
So, Lucretia, you're actually a neocon then, because this is the way neocons think. But neocons actually think values should help dictate our foreign policy.
Let Ukraine and Russia fight it out. Have Europe fix it, whatever. I don't care. If what you say is true and most of Africa is still in a developing state, it seems to me that we have much in common we ought to have great sympathies with those parts of Africa that are trying to develop, that are doing so under Western values. And that's where we should consider putting our resources, if we're going to put resources into those kinds of things at all.
Can I give you
Go ahead.
Well,
Steve.
Can I give you an example? And you never hear about it because it is successful, and it's Botswana. Botswana has enjoyed much faster economic growth. General Motors has a plant in Botswana that makes cars for the continent. And why is it? Well, Botswana is a country that looks pretty Western. They have secure property rights. They have real democracy. They enforce. In other words, they actually have assimilated Western values, and they're prospering for it. So,
in a world of if there were limitless resources, then you would want to help everybody, but you have to prioritize where you spend defense dollars.
I'm saying pick
Africa comes, and
Nigeria
Africa could come over any country in Latin America, over any European country. They're far more.
I'm okay with Argentina,
but.
Right.
No, I mean,
bailing them out, right? Yeah.
If you wanted to try to build Western institutions, we should be doing it in places like Colombia and Venezuela and Peru, and that should be first. And then Europe, I think, and the Middle East second and third. Africa at the end. I'm not saying we should just walk away from Africa entirely. It's the lowest priority. We don't have enough money to go around. You guys sound like neocons. I love it.
No, it's not that at all.
Okay, I don't know how we got sidetracked on
because
Africa,
I asked you why do we care about Ukraine and we don't care about Nigeria? Excuse me.
Yeah. Well, any place in Africa
this is actually one of the fundamental ideas about grand strategy is that the United States does not want any hostile power to be in charge of Asia or Europe.
Yeah.
Africa's just not as core because you can't. I mean, the cold-blooded of it is the threats to our security would come from the other industrialized parts of the world, which have been Europe and East Asia, not Africa, because they're just not powerful enough.
The Catholic Church is much more interested in Gaza and even Ukraine than they are in Africa, where, as a matter of fact, it's not just the Anglican Church, it's also the Catholic Church, which is experiencing the largest growth in the world in African nations. And so my point is that it's just not a salient issue for people, and it should be. I don't care about Gaza anymore. I don't. They can scream genocide all day long. They can march in the street with their stupid purple hair and their nose rings and everything else. I don't care.
By the way, that's the protest in the United States, because if that happened in Gaza, all those people would be executed.
Of course they would. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But why not?
I mean,
Why
there's
not?
no purple-haired nose rings in Gaza itself.
You know,
No,
there's been
I-
Rwanda
so
genocide.
If you're, so if you're right, there's a deep strategy behind what Trump is doing. Gaza is just part of the puzzle of settling down the Middle East, right? And maybe that, I agree with you. Maybe that's letting the Israelis have a free hand to do what they want, because we have helped them knock off the Iranians, who are a hostile regime to us and the major troublemaker in the region. The Middle East becomes calmer, and that allows us to concentrate on other more important things. That's the only point for us why Gaza is important, because it's just key to helping Israel settle the region down, and it seems to be working. That's what I actually went on Fox today. I was on an Outnumbered show, and the first thing they asked was this, and I said, "You would have liked this, Steve." I said, "As the last remaining neocon, the original gangster neocon, I confess I was wrong about Trump. I think he actually knows what he's doing." And then I said, "But there's a kind of a neocon
instincts.
understanding of what he's doing, which is
I was just
settle
going to
down,
say that.
settle
I
down
mean,
the Middle East, pacify Europe,
right?
and then focus on China,
but then
secure the Western Hemisphere."
But meanwhile, it looks like we're getting ready, possibly, or at least saber rattling, but maybe more with Venezuela.
Wait, before you move on to Venezuela, I have a question for both of you, because I'm very worried about you. How are you holding up? Are you guys okay?
What?
Are your
talking to
dogs
Steve or
okay?
me?
Is your wife okay?
What?
The
What?
shutdown.
Oh,
Isn't it devastating your lives? Are
No.
you guys
I've been
okay?
through this, yeah. Why?
I
God.
actually did have a conference cancel out on me
really?
because of the shutdown.
Our friend Ty had to cancel with the 57 senior foreign military leaders
Oh,
from the
yeah.
Naval
Yeah,
War
so-
College.
Oh, yeah.
John.
Okay.
Had to
bummer.
cancel. Yeah. But
Well, there-
Other than that, I haven't really even noticed a shutdown's been going on.
No, by the way, did it come up, John, that since you've done Outnumbered, you're the obvious person to go on The View, who says that no.
he did that. He
Yes,
said
this
that.
came up.
Yeah.
This came up. They had
You
a
didn't
segment
tell him
on.
to invite me, though, did you?
Well, he wasn't
Oh,
talking to The View.
there's
but-
only so much television can contain for a family audience. But no, so apparently The View people said no Republicans are willing to go on. And so on Outnumbered today, they produced all these emails and tweets of people saying they asked
Yeah.
to go on The View and been rejected. So
Right.
my proposal was, let's have the greatest event in cable TV news history and have a View versus the Outnumbered
Oh,
age
yeah.
match debate. Do you know that will be the highest rated cable
Yep.
TV news show in history? And I was like, you could sell tickets. You could have a stadium. You could 4,000 people would pay money to see this. And
Yeah.
I think that would be great. Let's have a quasi-civilized debate and let the two hosts. I think the Outnumbered hosts would kick the hell out of the View hosts.
Oh, yeah.
Probably, based on
Right.
what I've seen.
Well, they certainly have better shoes, as we know from.
So, any last thoughts? Because I still think we haven't got to the Putin-Trump summit.
Well,
And
I don't know that much about it.
yeah. I mean, what else is there to say? It's going to
Do you
happen.
think
and
there's
let's
going to
just-
be any peace deal at all? I mean, or do you think this is just Putin stringing Trump along again, just like he did in Anchorage, Alaska?
I don't
Steve,
know.
you're the great student of U.S.-Russian summits.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Look, it does appear that Russian oil revenues and now gas revenues are way down because Ukraine has successfully attacked a number of their facilities. And they, especially if we give them even 10 Tomahawk missiles, they're going to be in a world of hurt exporting their oil. And that may be starting to bear. I don't know. It is true. Well, I will tell this brief story. At the famous Reykjavik summit, which was an ambush of Gorbachev on Reagan, and all the drama ever since is about, do they do the deal that's bringing up SDI?
And
But
the deal was to go to zero on nuclear weapons.
right, but
It's
Reagan had to give up
insane, but
SDI
still,
and
yeah.
of
Yeah.
course, but that's another interesting story. But I got the Russian transcript once, which was translated, way more detailed than the State Department note takers that they released later. And there's one point where Reagan says to Gorbachev, "Hey, you bought a bunch of American wheat and you haven't paid us." And Gorbachev says, "Yeah, well, that's because we don't have any money. We're bankrupt," essentially is what he said. And he says, and that's because, the price of oil's gone way down, which it did in the end. That was the deliberate strategy of the Reagan administration. Oil went down to $10 a barrel from 50 by 1985, 86. And Reagan said, yeah, well, our oil patch in Oklahoma and Texas is really hurting from low oil prices, which was true. That helped precipitate the savings and loan crisis a few years later, which really spread out of Texas. And Gorbachev says, yeah, you're not fooling me. We know who started this. Ms. Gorbachev being very angry, saying, we know that you've been targeting our economy, especially our oil revenues, deliberately. And he was not happy about it. So I think that same dynamic still plays out. And who knows? The Europeans are really bad about all this. And the Chinese. There's an interesting insight. Somebody wrote today a shrewd article saying the country that's going to determine whether this is going to come to an end is probably going to be China more than us. Because if China says we're tired of this, we're going to buy less of your oil, then maybe Putin has to then make a deal.
I have no comment.
Lucretia.
Nothing.
No comment? Whoa.
If Lucretia's done on this, let's go to something even more fun. Totally switching gears. Our last topic is perhaps one of the most important Supreme Court cases, if not just of this year, but of many years, which was whether the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is unconstitutional. This is a case called Louisiana versus Calais. And Lucretia, I was just going to describe the facts, but go ahead.
No, I know. And while you're describing the facts, I have a question based upon the way you just phrased that. Is it the Voting Rights Act specifically, or is it the interpretation of the Voting Rights Act? If you would address that,
the way it's been interpreted. Yeah, the way it's been interpreted by the Supreme Court and by the government over many administrations. So, as people know, listeners to this podcast are up on the Constitution. They will know that the 15th Amendment to the Constitution prohibits discrimination in voting on the basis of race. Nevertheless, the southern states engaged in widespread suppression of the Black vote until the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which almost sounds like it repeats the 15th Amendment. There is also another part of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which was struck down by the Supreme Court about 10 years ago in a case called Shelby County. That part, which is called Section 5, said that no basically southern state, part of the Confederacy, could change anything related to voting without the permission of the federal government. Quite incredible. And maybe that kind of extraordinary remedy necessary in 1965, but the court said by 2013, the time for that was over. This case is about the last really part of the Voting Rights Act that produces a lot of government intervention, which is the Voting Rights Act of 1965 says no racial discrimination in voting has been interpreted by the Supreme Court and by the Justice Department over many years to require states to try to create congressional districts that would elect minority members of Congress, so-called majority-minority districts. So the quandary states find themselves in is that no matter what they do, they're going to get sued. If they draw districts without regard to race, then they get sued by the civil rights lobby for not creating enough majority-minority districts. If they draw districts with regard to race, I think they're violating the 15th Amendment, and they get sued by other groups who say you shouldn't be doing this at all. So the reason why I think this calls up the question that Lucretia is asking is the Voting Rights Act itself unconstitutional? Is that this case was actually argued last term. And in that case, it was really about how many racial districts does the state of Louisiana have to draw? And after hearing the case, the court said, no, we're going to ask now for the bigger picture. And so they sent the parties back and said, brief instead, is this whole practice unconstitutional?
Yeah, isn't this
really,
what?
It's the Voting Rights Act of 1965, right. The way it's been interpreted for many decades, also a violation of the 15th Amendment, which could end the use of race in the drawing of congressional districts and have a really, immediate and deep impact on congressional elections
And
particularly in the South. I think
Well,
the
before you
estimate
go on, Steve,
that this would produce 20 more Republican seats in the South in time for the midterm elections if these maps are overturned. Anyway, Lucretia,
before Steve says, because I know he's going to have very profound things to say, I want to point out the reason why I agree with you that this is perhaps one of the most important cases in years is that it really will get to the heart of the question about whether or not the most important thing for a voter to choose, the most important characteristic about a politician, et cetera, is that person's race.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
if the
Yeah.
court were to decide that it's okay to continue to draw these complicated, contradictory majority minority districts, it would be the end, I think, of any appeal to justice, to equal protection under the law. Either race matters or it doesn't. Now, that being said, before Steve kind of corrects me, and he'd be right by saying, I get that for 100 years, the Democratic Party in the South used every trick under the book, under the book. Wow, I've had too much scotch to ensure that blacks had no voting power at all. Grandfather clauses, poll taxes, single party registration, which isn't covered by the Voting Rights Act. I get why there was this need to shore up minority, especially black voting in the South. I get it. I think they took the wrong path, but I understand the motivation behind it. However, if the important thing is that a person is black or Mexican or whatever, or white, our Constitution has become a meaningless document. We are just a tribal society. And so
Yeah.
God, I hope that they look at Katanji and say, boy, are you an idiot. Boy, are you an absolute, complete, total idiot. It has nothing to do with the fact that you're black. It's because you're an idiot and you never should have been appointed to the Supreme Court.
So,
But
Lucretia, let's bracket this because after Steve gets to
be
respond,
profound.
we should focus on Justice Jackson's exact comments during the argument, which have caused quite a furor, which is what you're referring to. So, Steve, what is your thought?
Well,
about
I wasn't going to do
this
that.
case?
It was going to be let's see, 2 or 3 quick ones. One is we have come to the point now that reminds me a lot of antitrust in the bad old days. You know, back in the 50s and 60s, the 70s, if a bunch of companies charged the same price, they were guilty of collusion. If one company charged the lower price, that company was guilty of predatory pricing, right? We see the same thing, by the way, with a racial tinge on banking. If you make loans to low-income consumers, it's predatory lending. If you don't loan to low-income consumers, minorities, it's redlining, right? So how do the banks win in that? But in this particular case, and Lucretia put her finger on the point, which is something Harry Jaffe used to say. He used to say, really, the sequencing should have been the Voting Rights Act should have come first to allow blacks in the South to vote. However, you had things like, forget congressional districts, but you had a lot of cities in the South, like I think Montgomery, Alabama. They elected all of their city council with at-large elections, which means it was going to be 9 white people or whatever. We're going to win, even though the city might be 48% black, maybe. So they said, no, you got to have districts. Okay, fine. If you just carve up even, districts at random, you're going to get a few minority districts. And at that time,
have no power.
Right. Well, but at that time, I think the numbers were something like the Thurnstroms had this in their great book 20 some years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You only had like 100 black elected officials at any level of government in the old South in 1965. And today it's more like 10,000. It's obsolete. It's anachronistic. Right. Just on the sort of the way things have changed. And by the way, isn't it better? And here's Lucretia's point stated in a different way. Isn't it better if black candidates have to win white votes and white candidates have to win black votes rather than segregating people and saying your opinions should depend on your skin color?
I'll go one step further, Steve, and say that one of the problems with changing at-large elections to districts one of the problems with that is that if you had truly minority in simple terms, let's say you're talking about a city council and 40% of the population is black and 60% is white. That's oversimplified, but you get the point. So you draw the districts so that 2 of 5 become black districts and they elect a black person to office. That was the whole idea behind the interpretation of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. But what happens then? First of all, the 2 blacks, assuming, which is a wrong assumption, but assuming that the only thing that matters is the color of their skin and the color of the skin of the people they represent, they're a minority. On the other hand, if you've got, what did you say, 48% of the population in a city is black, and somehow back in 65, all of those particular districts elected whites, how are those whites going to get into office without appealing to the interests of the black population? Those are the kinds of arguments that make the ridiculousness of the Voting Rights Act just not just ridiculous, but downright just unjust. I don't know the right word for it, but I hope the Supreme Court does the right thing. Now, John, tell us what it was Ketanji said. Ketanji said.
So just as this is almost like I guess we're having it at the end of the show, but it would be an amuse-bouche at the beginning of the show. Is in the course of oral argument, Ketanji Brown Jackson explicitly compared blacks to being disabled. And she said, why isn't the Voting Rights Act just like the Americans with Disabilities Act? And you had to pass the Americans with Disabilities Act to be able to give the handicapped access, the disabled access to buildings and places which they couldn't access. And she said, isn't the Voting Rights Act just like that? And then she said something like, they're both disabled.
Yeah.
This was a huge controversy on social media.
Well, yes and no. I will tell you that I was mentioning it to someone and wanted to get the exact quote, and it took me 4 pages of a Google search and 3 different revisions of my search before I could actually find the quote. That being said, because Steve says we've gone along, which we have, I'm going to do something I don't normally do. I'm going to begin with what is all the 3 of us agree may be the best Babylon Bee of all time. The caption is, Clarence Thomas gently explains to KBJ that not all black people are mentally disabled, just her. But what I want to do is go just a little further and read from the actual, Steve, maybe you should link to it in this case, but not wanting to embarrass Jackson in front of the rest of the court, Justice Thomas waited for a brief recess to explain. I don't know how to say this best, Ketanji, but not all black people are mentally disabled. It's just you. You have an exceptionally low IQ. The fact that you have an exceptionally low IQ has absolutely nothing to do with your skin color. You're just an idiot.
Right. Oh,
That's
man.
so great. Oh, I mean, again, it's just, yeah, sorry. You can't outdo the Babylon Bee any way you look at it. All right. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
You sure you're
Go
okay
ahead.
after the shutdown, right? You
Yeah.
guys are doing okay? I don't have to. All right,
Yeah.
just making sure. I guess that Mendami Dami Dami Wami Wami held his own last night, unfortunately, in the debate because he kept to the lack of affordability in New York. But anyway, first Babylon Bee, could a communist Muslim terrorist be the solution to New York City's budget problems? This one's for you, John. We didn't discuss it, but we've discussed it before. John Bolton's mustache agrees to testify against him in exchange for immunity.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I know. There are actually some pretty good ones. Public service announcement. Do not go really fast in a boat with a Venezuelan flag right now.
Yeah, that's right.
Just a couple more. With Israel withdrawal, Hamas finally able to conduct public executions in peace. I wish that's not even funny. Okay. Democrats warn we are now further away from World War III than ever before. One last one. Democrats explain to young Republicans they're supposed to engrave their messages on bullets instead.
Right.
All right,
Ah,
guys. What a
All right,
lovely
well-
week it's been.
yeah.
Always drink your whiskey neat and buy more books. And Steve, what AI nugget do you have for us tonight?
So this week I asked ChatGPT to do a parody op-ed column by Lucretia.
Oh,
So it's pretty good. But here's just one paragraph, and listeners, you tell us if this is close or if it's lacking a certain songfreud. Okay, here it is. Meanwhile, the university, formerly the guardian of civilization, is now a cross between a daycare and an inquisition. Students require trigger warnings for Aristotle, but no warning whatsoever before plunging into the intellectual abyss of gender fluid astrology. You can't even quote the Federalist Papers without someone accusing Madison of microaggressions. Madison, the man's only vice was writing too much. That sounds about right. You accept that, Lucretia?
I actually don't think he
it
writes
doesn't
too
sound
much.
like Lucretia at all.
No,
I
I
didn't
thought
think
it,
that
I thought it was
sounded
close.
her at all. Really?
Actually, I think I told you guys really quickly that we were at friend's house and pulled up a bunch of stuff off Grok about the Three Whiskey Happy Hour, and they love that. So Grok loves John,
Of course
Oh.
makes
it
a
does.
little
Everybody
bit of fun
does.
of John's measured and erudite
Ah.
and rational and da da da. Steve is they actually make some comments, probably because of all my comments about your analogy man, but your analogies are usually pretty good and very instructive for the audience. And I am just a raging nut job.
Well, congratulations. Yeah, bye-bye. Talk to you guys next
Bye.
week.
Bye, everybody.
And I'm going to stop recording, and we're just going to let you go because I don't know how to stop the live stream. And so I think we just have to
Bye,
stop the whole
everyone.
thing.
Have a
Bye,
wonderful
everyone.
week. Thanks for
Right.
Bye,
joining.
everybody.
Okay.